Good evening, everyone. I'm Pia Hontiveros. It's not politics as usual in this time of contagion and need. You're watching CNN Philippines. The Luzon-wide community quarantine is extended until the end of April. For now, we're getting ready to pause for a few days this Holy Week, but there's no rest when it comes to the spread of COVID-19. In reality, infections are rising worldwide, and while that's happening, many Filipino families are still waiting for help that has been promised to them. 18 million Filipino families who are supposed to receive anywhere from 5 to 8,000 pesos from the national government. We're keeping track of the almost 300 billion pesos in cash aid meant for the poorest of the poor and other forms of government assistance and support. Joining us now on the show is Ernesto Pernia, the head of the State Planning Agency, the National Economic and Development Authority, or NEDA. Thank you, Secretary Pernia, for joining us.
Thank you, Pia, for inviting me.
Secretary Pernia, there's never been a crisis like this before brought about by a pandemic. So does this leave us no choice but to accept that our economy will be severely affected, as in other parts of the world, that we're never going to make that 6 to 7 to 8% GDP growth?
No way can we achieve 7 to 8% growth rate this year. It will be a miracle, Pia.
And okay. Well, what we saw here, Secretary Pernia, the Bangko Central stepping in and lending that 300 billion pesos that we so desperately need. Tell us more about this, sir. The power of the central bank as a lender of last resort to be the backstop and the safety net for a country's economy.
No, the central bank is not the lender of last resort, maybe domestically, but we still have access to international financial markets. So, and we have quite, comfortable headroom between where we are now in terms of debt to GDP ratio and, something that can already start raising the red flag.
Okay, because the president a few nights ago talking about how sending out messages about how there might not be enough money. We will have enough money. We will have enough resources to tap to cope with this pandemic, sir.
We will have to get sources of money, and we are not really cornered. We're not being painted in the corner in terms of financial sources. As I've said, our headroom regarding where we are now in terms of debt to GDP ratio is only about 41%, 41.5%. And we could easily we could no when it's called for, we can raise it to say 47%, and that will bring us about a trillion pesos, which is about 5% of our uh, GDP, nominal GDP.
And Secretary Ernie, in layman's language, that means that, in other words, what we're saying is wag po tayo mag-alala. Ganun po ba?
No, hindi naman. We have to worry because we don't want to as much as possible we want to borrow domestically and avoid borrowing in the international market, because then the international market is more demanding in terms of payment scheme and interest rates. So that's why our borrowing ratio, borrowing the our divide the borrowing division is something like 75% domestic and only 25% foreign.
Secretary Pernia, can you tell us about how government is helping, addressing the needs of the formal sector, the informal sector, yung mga SMEs. But for example, yung mga self-employed, no? How are we going to find them and help them? OFWs,
We
karamihan
have the
bumabalik, lalo na yung mga seafarers dahil wala nang barko. The middle class also. I'm sorry, so many questions in one question, sir. So many people in need of help.
yeah, we have financial assistance for the workforce, the those who are laid off, or those who can't get employed at this time. We also have a fund for seafarers and our land-based OFWs when they come home. Uh, but we have also this 200 billion pesos. It's called Social Amelioration Package, which is provided to 18 million families or households, uh, and they are given to as I've said, those who have no income, no means of financial support, no means of no income to pay for food and basic other basic necessities and so on. So that's about 18 million families being supported by this 200
Yeah.
billion pesos social amelioration fund,
Yeah. But
which is
yes. Yeah. But Secretary
expected to
Pernia,
last for at least 2 months. Yes.
pero Secretary Pernia, in the last few days, ang dami pong nagsasabi, paano naman po yung middle class? The middle class doesn't have the huge savings, for example, and even if they have savings, they're going to eat up into that, no? So, firstly, no, how are we going to define yung middle class? And is the government going to step in and help them?
Actually, if you multiply 18 million times five members of the household, you are hitting about what 90 million already, and that can include already a good portion of the middle class. 90 million Filipinos out of 108 million Filipinos. So that already covers the 90 million already covers quite a bit of the middle class. But yeah, you're right. There are
Okay.
also lower middle class
Yeah.
families that need more support, and that is being considered now
Okay.
by the government.
I see. Okay. So what about yung mga self-employed? Um, paano po sila?
Yung mga self-employed nga, kasi many of them are out of work, and they are being supported by
Right.
the Social Amelioration Fund or from the TUPAD, the TUPAD, which is a program with the Department of Labor. So
Okay.
the funds are there.
Secretary
It's just
Pernia, this is something also I asked Secretary. Yeah. Sorry,
I
go
was
ahead,
going to
sir.
say that the funds are there. It's really just the distribution, the logistical nightmare of distributing these funds, which is taking a little bit of quite some time.
Well, it's good you brought that up, sir. Itong nightmare distribution issues. And this is something I asked Secretary Anyo earlier. This is something that economists have said. If we had a national ID system in place, would distribution have been so much easier?
Yes, but then we just started this national ID pilot testing. We started, I think, October last year, and we were targeting about 50 million, cover 50 million registrants, but we have not been able to do that because the this pilot tests of the national ID was disrupted by this COVID crisis. So today we had a meeting,
Secretary,
meeting, and I asked for an exemption for the Philippine Statistics Authority to be able to carry out their activities, not only in terms of the national ID, but also in terms of collecting data on the labor force, employment data, the GDP, national accounts data, as well as prices and other, in fact also we also collect data on manufacturing and other industries. So that was
Right.
that
Well,
request
speaking
for
of
an exemption
manufacture, yeah.
was approved by the
Okay. Well, speaking of
yeah, yes.
Yes. Well, speaking of manufacturing in other industries, sir, mabuti na nabanggit niyo na po yun na yung itong modified lockdown that you were talking about that you hope will be established or implemented. Can you tell us what you have in mind when you say modified lockdown?
Well, export industries, export firms, firms that are exporting export products are exempted. Agricultural work and agricultural production is exempted, and several other manufacturing enterprises like BPOs. BPOs is a service industry, are also exempted, and also the those working in these special economic zones like the PESA, they're also exempted. So there are several exemptions, and as I've said, just 30 minutes ago, I proposed for an extension for Philippine Statistics Authority data collection activity.
All right. Well, Secretary Ernesto Pernia of the NEDA, sir, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Maraming salamat po, sir. It's not politics as usual on CNN Philippines. When we return, a closer look at what science is telling us about COVID-19. This is not politics as usual. We'll be right back. It's not politics as usual here on CNN Philippines. World Health Organization says global research on finding a vaccine and treatment for COVID-19 has accelerated at incredible speed. We're joined today by Dr. Takeshi Kasai. He is the WHO's Regional Director for the Western Pacific. Dr. Kasai, thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Dr. Kasai, let's begin with this. Is the Philippines doing enough to fight COVID-19? Are we doing the
I'm
right
sorry.
things?
Can you repeat the questions?
Okay, is the Philippines doing enough to fight COVID-19 and are we doing the right things, Dr. Kasai?
I think the Philippine government made the right decisions to lock down, and the life under the lockdown is difficult. And I'm afraid, I'm really aware that how much Philippine people sacrificing under this lockdown. Because actually, Philippines is now a very critical moment to prevent the countries to start experiencing a large-scale community outbreak. And I think it's extending the lockdown is a very important decision. Unfortunately, we haven't seen the effect yet. And I see there is a very important two things that we need to do. Number one is that even there's lockdown, it's so important that every individual to participate. Participate means stay home, and then you do your precautions, basic precautions, to protect yourself, protect your family, protect your community. The second thing is that even under the lockdown, the infections might continue. So it's very important to organize the public health intervention, such as a tracing and identifying the contact and quarantine them. These are very important actions, even under the lockdown. And I'm aware that the Department of Health is really trying to do this in a very expedited way. And I'm very much looking forward that the result will come out.
Dr. Kasai, if we haven't seen the effects of the lockdown and, well, we just extended it to April 30, should we extend this beyond April 30 just to be, well, safe and sure?
It's very difficult to predict what it would be happen, but what is important is to be vigilant and make a very cautious, a thorough decisions. And when we say a lift or extend the lockdown, it's not just to continue the same level or bundle of the interventions. There are some options to peel one by one so that we can balance out the intervention, and then it's a negative consequences, i.e. the impact to the society and economy.
Dr. Kasai, if we cannot do mass testing, what is the next best thing we can do?
Actually, there's no countries around the world, including a rich country, who can offer tests to those who need everybody. Of course, testing is important, but what is most important is actually from the test, you try to identify the potential contact and then they quarantine them. And by doing that, we can reduce the chance of transmissions. So that's the most important things from the testing to do.
Dr. Kasai, given our experience at the moment and the way our hospitals, felt very challenged by this pandemic, do you think what we need to do is to build up our healthcare system so that we are ready for the next pandemic or for the next health crisis? Do we really need to, go that extra mile?
Again, Philippines, because of the lockdown, we're not really experiencing a so-called large-scale community outbreak. And what is really, really important is to try to stay in this stage as much as possible, and if possible, to suppress. And to do that, again, every people's participations to fight this COVID is very important. And of course, the public health interventions, as I mentioned, a contact tracing, and then quarantine them. But while doing this and buying time, it is also very important to prepare for the large-scale community outbreak, as you mentioned. And I'm aware that the government is taking a lead together with the local government to make sure there is a sufficient healthcare services.
You mentioned a while ago the term to buy time. In the meantime, what we can only wait for a vaccine and for a treatment. The research is going on. Is there anything new that you can share with us on this, Dr. Kasai?
Unfortunately, there's no specific treatment or the vaccine for these diseases. But researchers around the world and then institutions, both public and private, are really, really gearing up to find a effective treatment or vaccines. For the vaccine, there are more than 50 candidate vaccines already on the table, and then some of them actually starting a trial, which is much, much faster speed than our experience in the past. But to check the safety and then effectiveness, it may take a little bit more time. Now, the treatment, also there is a massive trial. Trial means how to check how effective those drugs are ongoing. And WHO is offering the two platforms. One is called a R&D Blueprint, which we developed after the Ebola to make sure that there's a expedite the trial process. But we also developed a new platform called a Solidarity platform, which allows many countries around the world to do a trial following the same protocol so that we can use the output together and then analyze quickly.
Dr. Kasai, final words from you.
Sorry, I'm afraid, can you repeat the questions?
Final words, Dr. Kasai.
Yes.
Your final words?
I know that a barangay, the community in the Philippines is very strong. And this COVID-19 fight basically requires an individual and community a solidarity and participations. And we are in a very critical moment, but with the leadership from the top, but also the leadership from the individual and then the community and the local level, I'm sure that we can push back this virus. And W.H.O would do our best to work together with the Department of Health and Government of the Philippines.
Dr. Takeshi Kasai, the Regional Director for Western Pacific, the World Health Organization, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Maraming salamat po. Well, as part of the government's plan to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, officials are quickly setting up mega quarantine facilities for patients, PUIs, and PUMs. The Ninoy Aquino Stadium is one of them, but contrary to what was announced on Monday, the facility is not up and running just yet. Carolyn Bonkin has that story.
The military's medical team spent the whole Wednesday to make sure that a quarantine facility here in Manila is ready to accept COVID-19 patients. The Armed Forces spokesperson said the Ninoy Aquino Stadium is nearly ready, but they can't accept patients just yet, pending a go signal from higher ups, and they have yet to finish necessary installations, like security cameras and the public address system, and some remaining beds are still to be delivered. As of this afternoon, only 37 of 112 beds have arrived.
We're expecting that this will be operating very soon, and it should be operating very soon. Ngayon, pinoproseso natin yung mga kulang, yung mga kulang. So pagka nandito na lahat yun, very minimal naman yung kulang,
The medical team toured the quarantine site to be familiar with the facility and procedures. Brigadier General Edgard Arevalo says the team will be divided into 3 groups. Each team will have 3 doctors, 5 nurses, 13 medics, and 33 soldiers to provide security. They will be on duty for a week.
After yung shift na yun, matapos niya yung 7-day duty niya, magko-quarantine siya. At habang nagko-quarantine siya, na hindi naman na siya lalabas, may quarantine facility tayo para sa medical health professional natin from the AFP. Yung next shift naman, magte-take over.
Even the maintenance personnel will be quarantined. The facility will cater to the infected, but only with mild or no symptoms. They should be referred here by a hospital. In Manila City, Carolyn Bonkin, CNN Philippines.
Many will say the COVID-19 pandemic seems mightier than anything, but perhaps it's appropriate to say the pen is still mightier than this outbreak. In these dark times, words can comfort us. Words can touch people's lives. It is an honor to welcome to the program today national artist Virgilio Almario. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Salamat
Magandang gabi po sa inyo.
Pia. Hello. Magandang gabi sa inyo lahat.
Thank you, sir. Sir, nagsulat po kayo ng ilang mga tula about the coronavirus. About COVID, can you tell us more about these poems?
Well, ang aking ginawa, starting noong March 22, ay sumulat ako una tungkol sa paano ba tinitingnan ng mga tao itong na coronavirus 19. Medyo nag-click, maraming nag-like sa akin tula. Kaya naisip ko, hindi siguro dapat isang tula lamang ang aking gawin. Kaya magmula noong March 22 hanggang ngayon, araw-araw ay gumagawa ako ng tula para sa iba't ibang aspekto ng buhay ng tao sa ilalim ng krisis na ito. Meron akong tula na nagpapasigla sa mga tao. Meron akong tula na humahanga sa mga frontliners at mga doktor. Meron tula rin naman ako na nagpapaalala sa mga masasamang bisyo ng mga tao na dapat baguhin. At meron naman akong mga tula na nagsasabi kung ano ang magandang mga tradisyonal na virtues ng Filipino na dapat nating gamitin sa panahon ng ganitong krisis. Kaya araw-araw ay iba-iba yung aking ginagawang tula, pero may kaugnayang lahat sa ating karanasan sa kasalukuyan.
Mr. Almario, sir, pwede niyo po bang basahin yung iba? Meron pong magagandang mga tula, yung itong tatlong maikli, Yung ala Juanito Pelaez, ala Hermana Rufa, ala Piloso Potasio. Tsaka parang maikli po siya. Para po siyang Japanese haiku.
Yan ay traditional poem natin. Yan ang tinatawag na tanaga. Ang tanaga natin ay parang ang haiku dahil maikli. Pero sarili natin yan at isang forma na kaya ko ginagamit ay gusto ko rin maipakilala mabuti sa mga Filipino. Yung pagmamahal kasi sa sariling kultura ay bahagi ng aking misyon sa pagtula.
Yung mga pamagat po nila ala Juanito Pelaez, may mga pangalan, Piloso Potasio, tapos may ala Hermana Rufa. Bakit po ganito?
Hinango ko sa novela ni Rizal. Yung tatlong characters na yon, si Juanito Pelaez, si Hermana Rupa at si Piloso Potasio, para sa akin ay magandang halimbawa kung paano may tatlong uri ng pananaw na gagamitin ang mga Filipino kapag may ganitong krisis. Isa yung kamukha ni Juanito Pelaez na walang pakialam. Yung isa kamukha ni Hermana Rupa na masyado namang religyosa ang magiging tingin sa lahat ng bagay. At may kamukha naman ni Piloso Potasio na higit na nagbibigay sa atin ng espiritu ng makabayan.
And Mr. Almario, one last question na lang po, huling tanong. Meron po kayong, yung binanggit na po ninyo may ginawa po kayong tula para sa, may sinulat po kayong tula para sa mga babaeng frontliners. It was very moving. Ang tawag niyo pa nga sa kanila, perlas ng silangan.
Yeah. Totoo naman yun. Hanga ako sa kanila kaya ako nagawa yun. In fact, hindi lang yun. Bawat sektor ngayon na nakikita kong lumalahok para magtulong-tulong tayo sa krisis na ito ay iniisip kong tulaan lahat. Isa-isa ko silang tinutulaan para ipakita sa bayan na mayroon tayong itong krisis na ito, meron tayong mga bagong bayani na dapat hangaan.
Matagal na silang bagong bayani, hindi lang po natin nakikita.
Hindi lang nakikilala.
Pala, ang mahalaga ay yung mga doktor, yung mga nurse, no? Oo, hindi lang nakikilala. Maraming salamat po sa inyo, Mr. Virgilio Almario, National Artist for Literature. Thank you very much, sir, for granting us this interview. And we leave you now with the sound of church bells tolling. Churches simultaneously did this at 3 this afternoon to signal the start of a televised interfaith prayer. I'm Pia Hontiveros. Thank you for watching. It's not politics as usual.